Can someone send me a copy of the motions via email?
Ginger, you mean the agenda?
The agenda. I have the agenda, but I guess the motions that we would read.
Oh, we don't have the we don't have the motions. Like the Board of Appeals would read it into the record.
Hey, Paul, that's Tara is asking for that.
Oh, hello, Tara. We don't have any.
Hi.
We don't have any motion sheets.
We can make them up, Tara. We'll be fine.
Yeah,
Got it.
We'll have it on the last slide of the presentation.
Perfect.
Thanks.
All right, shall we call to order? 6:02. Zoning Board of Appeals call to order for meeting February 4th, 2021. Roll call shows via Zoom and in person. The entire board is present, if I'm not mistaken. First, let me read the preamble for the meeting this evening. So, and as a reminder for you guests as well, the Zoning Board of Appeals is charged with the responsibility of granting variances to ordinance requirements after determining whether there exists an undue hardship upon an applicant. In determining whether or not to grant a variance, the board shall apply the criteria specified in the City Code of Ordinances to the facts of each case. The Zoning Board of Appeals does not create zoning, nor can it change zoning. Matters brought before the Board of Appeals are to be concerned only with the variances from the requirements of the zoning ordinances, the sign ordinances, development and environmental ordinances, etc. The board has no authority to grant variances for use, density, or height. Further, the board hears cases requesting an appeal to a staff interpretation or decision on these same ordinances. Final decisions of the Zoning Board of Appeals may be appealed by petitioning the Superior Court of DeKalb County within 30 days after the decision is rendered. And with that, the minutes, do we have approval of meeting minutes from the January 7th, 2021 meeting? Do I hear a motion or any changes to the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes from the January 7th meeting.
Again,
We have a second. Claire?
I'll second.
No, I thought you were objecting. Okay, we have a motion, a second to accept the meetings from minutes from the previous meeting. Any organizational and procedural items? I don't believe so. Unfinished business. I think we wrapped everything up last time. New business. I would like to accelerate one, and that we have them listed here in order of 1 through 5. One of the cases is asked for a variance. So we'd like to preempt that and bring that to the beginning so we can vote on that, a delay rather, postponement of the variance for a later date. So that was ZBA code 21-07. Michael Strieger, agent for the homeowners of 5147 Pine Branch Court, Dunwoody, Georgia, 30338, seeks a variance from chapter 16, section 16-78 to remove trees and construct a modular block retaining wall in the 75 feet stream buffer. The tax parcel number for that site is 18-365-01-219. And I believe the applicant's here and would like to make a motion or appeal for a postponement, deferment till the next meeting or the March meeting. The applicant in-house or on Zoom? Okay, great. Would you mind?
I do see, I apologize. I do see a hand raised now, Michael Strager.
Okay, so Michael's he's one of the petitioners. So, okay, great.
Yes,
so,
can you hear me?
yes, Michael, just zoom in and identify yourself, please.
Sure. Michael Strieger, landscape architect with Land Design and Consulting. we would like to defer to the March meeting. Reason being, we sort of received comments from staff kind of late in the game. We had submitted this and thought we were doing okay, that we would have staff support. Unfortunately, it was a denial. Typically we different cities and counties will work with them to make sure that we enter these hearings with, with a good approval, or at least, some positive feedback. We are going to work on, we did speak with Paul, and we are going to work on a mitigation plan. We do understand the 75-foot buffer and the spirit of what that's trying to protect. This particular property, we feel as if, even though we're hoping to tiptoe into that 75-foot buffer, the existing conditions are pretty bad with erosion. We really feel like we can develop a plan to get what the client is looking to do with their home, to expand some usable space. It's a very sloped property. And
So,
also-
Joe, I don't mean to cut it off, but
Yeah.
I move to approve that the continuance.
Great. And
Second,
and this is to the March 4th public hearing, is that correct?
Yes,
Mr. Lester?
it is for the March hearing.
I second it.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor of delaying ZBA 21-07 to deferring it to the March meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, great. Deferment granted. First case, new business, ZBA 21-05, Yasha Hadari, attorney for the homeowner of 4732 Chambly Dunwoody Road, requests a variance from chapter 27, section 58 to increase the maximum allowed lot coverage from 35% to 69%. The tax parcel number is 18-352-10-034. Is the applicant present or on Zoom?
Can you hear me?
Staff?
Hello?
Okay, great. I just want to make sure somebody's here. We're gonna let staff lead it off, but I was wondering if anybody was here. So,
My client's here as well, so thank you.
okay, excellent. Staff, would you mind giving us the rundown?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to double check that people can see the presentation. Not screens. Can people on Zoom see the presentation at the moment? Can people on Zoom see the presentation at the moment?
No, we
Yes.
can't hear anything though.
Paul, we can see the presentation, but you may need to make sure the mic is turned on right this second next to you.
So the mic is on, but I think I'm muted.
That computer should be muted, but the microphone that's right next to you is you talk directly into that and we should be able to hear you.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ginger. Yeah, this is the case, like 4732 Chambly Dunwoody Road. They're requesting a variance from chapter 27, section 58 to increase the maximum allowed lot coverage from 35 to 69%. This case is a little bit different than other cases that are typically coming before you, because it is not sort of for a future project, but it is for a project that's already implemented. This case goes back to April of last year, when we received a code enforcement complaint about the project being installed. We had our staff go out to the site. They've issued citations. There are 2 citations, one for unpermitted construction, a second one for exceeding the lot coverage on the site. The lot coverage case is before you today. They had a court hearing in September, which was ultimately halted. It was paused to give the applicant the opportunity to go through the variance process. And they've subsequently applied for this in November. And this case is before you right now. on this slide, you can see sort of an aerial image of the site. On the left-hand side, you can see the currently installed lot coverage. So you can see compared to the right-hand side, you can see an additional paved area towards the left and additional paved area along the driveway. And this was sort of installed by the homeowner at some point last year or the year before. This is a site plan to the site that points out the additional paved area. Because we don't have a before survey, we can't exactly say which parts have been installed, but based on the aerials, kind of that's probably the best precursor to see what has been installed additionally. And then here are additional images to show you the location of the additional paved area behind the house and then to the side of the house. And you can see the color being slightly different to what's newly installed. We have looked at this based on the variance criteria, and we found that this does not meet the requirements because it's above the minimum relief necessary to make use of the parcel for residential purpose. And we also found that there's no hardship requirement present on the site, and therefore we are recommending denial for the request.
Thank you, staff. Would the applicant like to have 10 minutes to speak in favor and tell us why you're seeking the variance, why you think you merit the variance?
Absolutely. Can you see me as well?
Yes, you're on Zoom.
Okay, I actually can't see my screen, and I don't know if I'm able to share my screen with you so you can see a little, just an exhibit I wanted to show you all.
Should be able to share on Zoom. Share your screen, I would think.
Hold on one moment for me. I'm moving him over to a panelist at this time.
Great, thank you.
Okay, sir, you should be able to share your screen and your video at this time.
You should be able to. Is that Zoom on? No.
Let's see. It looks like I can't share a screen while another participant is sharing their screen.
Okay, I've just stopped that sharing. You should be able to share yours now.
Okay, thank you very much. So before I pull that up, I think it'll be useful for me to go into a little bit of background. My client's also here as well. She is 65 years old. She has lived in this property since 2000, so for the past 21 years. And she was diagnosed with lung cancer in 2008. One of the doctors, the surgeons, they were adamant about how she needs to get physical exercise. Because of her living situation at home, she was not able to basically go out, walk on the street. And so they basically tried to create, and when I say they, I mean the homeowners themselves tried to create a little bit more of walking space in the backyard. And that's what they did. One thing I wanted to show you is that although in those pictures, it looks like this is a densely residential area, I think it would be useful to see exactly where this property is located between Chamblee, Dunwoody, near North Shalford Road, and let me share that.
Yeah, I got him.
Did this image show up?
Yes.
Perfect. So right here with the red dot, that's my client's house. And as you can see in the before and after that staff showed, there is more impervious surface. Ultimately, we concur with the staff's historical analysis of how this came to be. My client installed this back in early 2019. Someone made a complaint about it in 2020. We got notified and we came in and we tried to resolve it. I won't go into issues with the American with Disabilities Act or the ordinance or anything else. Long story short, we were hoping that we could seek your approval for a variance so that we can resolve this. My client's been diagnosed with a second bout of cancer, And this whole situation has been extremely stressful. Obviously, it would have been ideal if we could have gone through the variance process before any of this happened, but this was the homeowner's modification they did on their own. And right now, we're just asking for essentially your graciousness in recognizing that this is a homeowner who's lived here for 20 years. She hasn't been trying to do anything improper. She isn't trying to do this for commercial gain. She did this because she thought this is what the surgeons wanted her to do. And so we're just asking for this variance to be allowed so she can put this behind her. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. There's some time remaining. If anyone else wants to speak in favor of the applicants, they have time to do so. Okay, if not, we'll open it up to any of those wanting to speak in opposition to this variance. So please approach the podium and state your name and address, please.
Hello, Patricia Aids Hansen, 4738 Chamblee Dunwoody Road. I am the homeowner directly adjacent to this property to the north. I have submitted to the planner, and hopefully that's been shared with the board, that my arguments in contra to the homeowner's arguments requesting denial based off the impact to my property. I can summarize if the board hasn't had an opportunity to review my arguments as well as my exhibits.
We see those materials, but if you don't mind summarizing for the record.
So my arguments revolve primarily around the fact that this property is not a level graded lot. And the portion of the lot that is adjacent to mine is actually sloped toward my lot. And that can be seen in a number of the exhibits that I attached. You can see the water flow would be toward my lot. Granted, 100% of the water issues are not as a result of the additional impervious surface. I have to say that the builder and the excavator who originally did the work probably didn't do any of the homeowners there any great service by the way they graded the lots, but any additional impervious surface just adds to my water problems. So being that the portion of the lot that is closest to mine slopes toward my lot, I have now additional accumulating water. And I note, in addition to the grade of the lot, that obviously in Georgia and Dunwoody and this area in particular, the soil is heavily clay. So the infiltration rate to clay is going to be slow to start with. So any additional impervious surface creates even a more load on those surfaces, which are still soil and grass and landscaping. And as everyone has noted, obviously the request for the variance occurred after the fact. And so any hardship on the applicant could have been avoided had the applicant merely followed the ordinances in the first place and accounted for the fact that there would be a potential impact on the adjacent properties. You know, as much sympathy as I have for the homeowner in her personal health situation, and as unfortunate as that is, that doesn't help with the additional impact to my property. And even though this is adjacent to some commercial or semi-commercial property, this neighborhood, it is in fact residentially zoned and is a residential area. These are large lot or relatively large lot properties. And so having a nearly fully paved yard is definitely not commensurate with the residential nature, and will have an impact not only from health and welfare due to the water runoff, but should probably be injurious to property value, not only of the property that's asking for the variance, but the neighboring properties as well. I also took some pause with the applicant's calculations on the total impervious surface. There's an additional location on the site plan that indicates that there is a rock pond on the opposite side. And I don't know exactly what a rock pond is, but using the normal nomenclature of what is a rock and what is a pond, that rocks by their nature are typically also impervious, and ponds are formed by laying an impervious surface of some sort, whether it be a liner or clay or some other sort of material in order to retain water. So I would say that the calculation probably is under a bit because there should probably be included that additional area within the total percent calculation of what is impervious surface.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else to speak in opposition? Thank you. Just say your name and address, please.
Yes. I hate these. Martin Wintermantle or Victor Wintermantle. I live in North Spring subdivision, which abuts this lady's property and the residential properties, both on either side of hers as well. And they back up to Kellogg Springs Circle and in North Spring subdivision. There may be several people on Zoom right now who are neighbors to the rear of this property, where they have added this substantial impervious concrete area slab. Years ago, I was on the DeKalb Planning Commission for a period of time. And you always like to come up with a resolution to address variances where they're reasonable and appropriate. This is anything but that. Actually, it's one of the most egregious violations of code that I've ever seen. We've actually doubled the impervious area of this property. The code calls for 35%, we're at 69 plus, double the impervious area. At the rear of this property, where it was excavated, as this lady had mentioned, below this slab that they put in is a lower area, and where all the water that now is not being absorbed on the property is running off and going into the drainage ditch at the back of the property and on the sides of the property. Ironically, this was done without ever even consulting the code or inquiring about whether or not this would become an issue if this concrete slab was installed on this property. To my way of thinking, it is, it defies logic, and it certainly defies the criteria of the code. And it was done before the fact with no consideration of code, and now they're requesting that they receive a variance to allow them to continue to maintain this property as it is. It simply doesn't make sense. And let me see here.
Yeah, how many more minutes?
I think that's about it. I will point out that in the front yard of this property, there is also a concrete fountain. It's not well defined on the picture, but it's about 12 feet across as well. So the actual area of impervious surface on this property, I do agree, is probably in excess of 69% of residential property. I would note also that, and certainly, you know, we don't want, there's no justification in making the case that you need an area to exercise that is level and concrete. 2 doors up from this property is the old Shallowford School property. It's where I take my dog up there. You can walk forever on the former playground of the Shallowford School property. It's a football-sized field, actually 2 football-sized fields. And you can get there from this property by walking about 100 feet down the street from the front door. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else to speak in opposition on the, anybody have any hand raisers on Zoom?
I show no hands at this time.
Okay, great. All right, if there's nothing else to add from the applicant, then we can close it for the board's discussion.
In terms of the Yasha here, now we have the applicant again.
Yeah, you have a few minutes left. Yep.
We actually did not recognize that there were any neighbors who were upset with this. And we would actually request, we'd move to table this until a subsequent date. We would like to speak with the neighbors and see if we can come up with some sort of resolution that would at least satisfy them, should the board be willing to give us the variance conditional on various drainage remedies. That's what we will seek. But we would like the chance to speak with them and hopefully do something that'll make them satisfied and approved and support our request for a variance as well, if the board would be willing to consider our motion.
So you're asking for a deferral?
Yes, we are.
We can bring that up to board for a vote. I would recommend that you also bring the staff back in those discussions. Because it could, right. So there may be some way to mitigate it, but do I hear a motion to let them, this case be deferred till a following meeting? You're asking for deferral for 1 month?
Could we have 2 months?
Okay.
What does the city think?
What's the process on that?
Joe, can I speak to that for a minute? While
Absolutely.
we're waiting for this. Well, I realize that the applicant would like to speak with the neighbors, but the essence of the variance has to do with code. It's not really working with the neighbors. It's about an impervious situation that can only really be remedied by either we approve a total this impervious situation, or we deny it where they have to go back to the whatever we decide is the percent that their property has to go back to. Now, at that point, they may have to have a discussion with the neighbors about some drainage. But I don't think a discussion with the neighbor is going to solve this issue that's before us.
I would agree. That's why I brought it's gonna have to be some kind of a consultation with the staff. There's gonna be some changes probably made for the staff to change their recommendation for sure.
So let's get down to, and I think you have a question as well. Let's get down to the essence of it. So if this gets denied, they have to remove it.
Yeah, that's correct. So, Mr. Chairman, if I could quickly chair, so we would, if you should you decide to defer, we would ask you to defer for 30 days to the March hearing, because there is a court case kind of that's halted, and that is sort of waiting on the resolution of this case. You're correct. So if what happened if this variance got denied is it would go back to the court and would have to be decided. We would likely request the applicant to remove the paving. That would go through our code enforcement division, and we would probably give them about 30 days to remove the additional paving.
Okay, thank you, Steph.
So my question is, it's been almost a year since this kind of all went down. I would imagine there's been a fair amount of discussion already. What is 2 months getting us that nearly a year hasn't given us already, is really my question.
Valid point.
And my question is the environmental impact of this having been installed 2 years ago will only continue to worsen. So I worry that any delay, not only are we continuing with code violation, but we're also sustaining the environmental impact.
I got another question. So were there 2 citations or 1 citation? I know you said 2, but I'm trying to figure out is one is for because they built something without unpermitted citation, and there's a second one for.
Yeah, the second one, board member, is because they exceeded the lot coverage.
So they got a citation for that as well.
Correct.
So when they went to court, did the judge say, listen, you have a variance application going, let's see how that goes, and then we'll decide?
That's correct.
Uh-huh.
Actually, it happened slightly different from that, which is we were actually opposing the ordinance and the fact that the American with Disabilities Act would supersede the local ordinance. When we discussed matters with the solicitor with regards to challenging the ordinance, one of the things that we discussed was the possible of a resolution. And he actually suggested that if we were able to get a variance, this would be a great way to put it behind both sides. From my perspective, from my client's perspective, that's also a no-brainer. If we could get a variance, and that would obviate this whole situation.
From my point of view, the only reason for pushing it is that if you see it not going anywhere, then you're probably more than likely going to remove it yourself without having us make a decision, because that usually imposes something on there. That's what I kind of see.
Well, I mean, I certainly don't have any experience in, ADA law or anything like that, but, there's accommodation and then there's excess. And while I can empathize with the situation, I'm more curious about the facts. The fact is, and whether it was ill-intentioned or not, it was done without a permit. The homeowners clearly been here since 2000, I was told. This was done in 2019. There's a medical accommodation in play. And then from reading some of the briefings on the case, there were other things that were cited, like this is an improvement to the home, but it wasn't quite clarified as to why. So I'm just trying to, get to the bottom of it. I think I want mediation as much as anyone, but I just don't know, tying it up in court or elsewhere is just gonna find that happy medium.
I mean, I think you got it. The facts are what they are. The thing was built without permit. I mean, it is what it is. So now the story is, what's going to happen? Are you going to try to remedy it by maybe, if they meet, maybe they'll come to a half a solution, or they'll do to whatever prevails. But since it's twice what it's supposed to be, you don't know what it is. So we know where the story is going to end. So does the court. And it's a matter of, if you got a variance, then I'll feel better, because then you got forgiven by us, So now, if we push it, that just means that, counsel and his clients and the neighbors, they get to figure out maybe they want to do a portion or something. But it's not that hard of a case. It's hard for us because the decision is not going to be a great decision. I see, but that's what it comes down to, guys.
So the applicant has requested a deferral. So unless there's a motion on the table, the deferral is going to be denied.
That's correct. That's correct.
Right. So we proceed. Any other-
I feel we need to proceed. And
Yeah.
I don't think anything's going to change in 30 days, talking to neighbors.
No, I would agree.
Right.
Unless it's all removed.
Correct.
Right. I don't think the attorney for the applicant felt that was the next step.
Board, any other questions for the applicant or the
I have one. I have a question, Joe. Staff, if looking at the aerial of the best case and the best that you could look for the history of this property, looking at the aerial, Is that if we are to deny the variance, is that where you want them to take it back to? Because at some point, we're gonna have to come up with a percentage, is that right? I mean, I assume we have to put a percentage into our motion. Would it be your recommendation to take it back to where it was before? Or would you allow that extra driveway portion and cut the backyard? What do we do?
In the absence of a variance, this would go back to the limit in the district. The limit in the district is 35%. So
Right.
it would have to be returned either to the original shape in case that's over 35%, or they could keep everything up to 35%, subject to obtaining permits for it.
So you would leave it up to the applicant to determine which 35% they have is most important to that.
So,
And with the, obviously, they have to have a driveway, the things that are in code.
so they wouldn't have to remove anything that was built prior to this
Oh,
case.
okay,
Anything
okay.
prior to this case is
Grandfathered in.
existing. Correct.
Okay, okay. So it's the new concrete.
So the new concrete on the side of the house and the back?
That's correct.
I have another
Oh.
question. Whatever.
Okay.
This is to the city. Is there a percentage that you feel comfortable over that you would recommend to us? Doesn't mean we'll adopt it, but is there a recommendation that you might want to propose?
We are bound kind of by the variance standards. And the question there is always the minimum relief necessary for a certain case, and then the hardship argument. And based on the text for this specific case, so not the personal circumstances of the homeowner, but sort of the technical criteria for this district, I do not think that there's a percentage in excess of 35% where we would recommend approval.
Okay.
I have a question for staff also. What is have you all discussed the impact of the concrete removal? Will that create even worse runoff issues? Or will there be other considerations involved in the removal of it? And would there be standards or restrictions on what the homeowner must do with that area once the concrete is removed?
Yes, board members. So this would have to comply with our soil erosion standards and with our site development standards. So we would have silt fencing around the site when it is removed to maintain the flow kind of from the site, and it would have to comply with the regular construction standards in the city of Dunwoody.
Good. Further questions? Discussions? Board members online? No further questions?
No.
Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to deny the variance request. I'm sorry, I don't have the case number in front of me.
2105, ZBA 2105.
ZBA 2105.
Seconded.
We have a second. All right, all those in favor of denial of the variance, say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. CBA 21-05 has been denied. Next case. ZBA 21-06, Blair Cole, owner of 4555 Village Spring Run, seeks two variances from Chapter 16, Section 78, and Chapter 27, Section 58, to encroach the 75-foot stream buffer into the minimum rear setback for the replacement of a deck and retaining wall, and for the installation of a paver patio. Tax parcel is ID 18-351-06-123. Staff, would you walk us through this one?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So that's correct. So these are two separate variance cases, but we would like you to consider them together because the proposed improvements could not be conducted if just one of the two variances granted. So we would like you all to consider those in tandem. This is for a residential lot that has sort of an irregular shape in the rear. So on this map, you can see sort of a protrusion at the rear property line that necessitates the rear setback variance. It also, there's a steep drop off to the rear. So what you can see here as this vegetated area is a steep, probably 30 feet drop off down towards a stream. And that stream necessitates the 75-foot stream buffer in this case. And this is shown here, sort of covering approximately 3/4 of the lot and pretty much making improvements impossible without first obtaining a stream buffer variance. The proposed improvement is the replacement of a deck in the location of an existing deck. So the dimensions are 15 by 19. It's marginally bigger, but it doesn't go further towards the stream. The applicant also proposes the replacement of an existing timber retaining wall. Both the deck and the timber retaining wall are aging and do need replacement. Here you can see an image of the proposed, again, sort of a new retaining wall in place of the existing retaining wall. And both of those you can see on the left-hand side of the image here, that's the existing deck and the timber retaining wall. And sort of immediately after the deck, you'll have this steep drop off down towards the stream. For this case, we found that it meets the requirements for both the stream buffer and the setback variance due to the limited size of the proposed improvement and the situation where the owner wouldn't be able to replace the deck without a variance in any form. And we would recommend approval subject to these two standard conditions that you see here.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present or online would like to speak? Please come to the podium. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Christy Cole. My husband is Blair Cole. Our address is 4555 Village Springs Run. And our home was built in 1994 as a cluster home, small lots. We bought it in 2000. And yeah, so half of our house is in a stream buffer because it wouldn't be built today, the city of Dunwoody. But our deck is wood and it's rotting, especially the stairs. And what we're doing is, the deck will be a tiny bit bigger because we're extending the deck to where the stairs were, because I don't like having stairs on the outside. It's steep and dangerous. So that will be all deck. We're adding a spiral staircase to the side because we need a fire escape. If we can't leave the front of our house, we need to get out the back, and it's 2 stories. So we're just trying to get a new deck built. We're working with a deck company. They're engineers. We have a project manager. So they're tying in the retaining wall with the pavers. We don't want any erosion either. We're trying to stop that as well. So we're trying to do it right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here who wants to speak in opposition to this variance request? If not, we'll close open forum and open up to the board for questions. Any questions, board?
So
Go ahead.
just maybe clarification. So in essence, a major portion of the house is in the stream buffer.
That's correct, sir. So like the majority of the existing residents, you can see the red line that goes right through the house on the site plan. That's the 75-foot stream buffer. So without a variance, nothing
They
could
can't
be
do.
touched.
Okay.
And everything's over the existing footprint, right? The retaining walls replacing the timbers, it's exact same location, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
that's
just
correct.
putting that for the record. Okay, do I have a motion?
I vote to approve.
A second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. CBA 21-06 is approved. Thank you. Next case, ZBA 21-08, Malam and Tia Soul, homeowners of 4796 Ridgeview Road, request a variance from chapter 27, section 58 to increase the allowable lot coverage percentage to 46.2%. Tax parcel is number 18-364-03035. Are the applicants present, want to speak? Thank you. Please address the podium, and
Do we want to do a staff presentation?
we could do that. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks,
you, Mr.
staff.
Chairman.
Running through these. Thanks, staff.
Thank you for entertaining me. This case is a lot coverage variance, and this is a variance from the zoning ordinance. The maximum in the district is 40%. They're asking for 46.2 for the installation of a pool and pool decking and a fire pit. The lot, as you can see here, is somewhat irregularly shaped, so it's diagonal to the street. Has a side entry garage. The side entry garage requires a longer driveway, and due to the nature of the lot, the driveway is even longer than would need to be, sort of creating more existing lot coverage than there would be in other cases, sort of addressing the unique circumstances argument. With this, the lot is also somewhat unique in that it has a sanitary sewer line in the rear yard that connects the neighborhood and connects like throughout several parcels in the neighborhood that you can see on the site plan, sort of with the 20-foot sort of sanitary sewer easement. The pool is wedged behind the house in the easement, so they're trying to stay out of the easement to not encroach into it. And we certainly can't have any encroachment into the easement there. So they wedged it in sort of in triangular shape towards there. Sort of here's a closer up image of what's proposed. So it's a pool that's approximately approximately 30 by 45 feet. And then a fire pit towards the side of the residence. These images show to an extent that the lot is sloping from one side to the other, necessitating retaining walls and on the site. And there is a mature magnolia tree that's certainly precious that may or may not be able to be saved as part of the construction. We try to address this with the applicant in some form, and I think they were willing to consider saving it as part of the application. This leads to kind of some unusual zoning conditions that we have provided to you all as part of our recommendation. And so overall, we're recommending approval, but I would quickly like to go through the zoning conditions to explain where they come from. You see kind of our zoning condition that addresses the site plan. We would ask, based on the request that was made as part of the proposal, that the proposed fire pit would not be included should you all decide to approve, to reduce the ask somewhat and mitigate the impact. The fire pit would be roughly in the location of the magnolia tree, sort of leaving the potential opportunity for that to be saved. We put in a condition in here to specifically address the sanitary sewer easement. That's sort of understood, but we wanted it to be as clear as possible as part of the case, that there would be no encroachment. And then because there's no guarantee that even without the fire pit, that the magnolia can be saved due to the construction coming close to the root zone of the tree, we have provided a condition that there would be 2 replacement trees should the tree not be able to be saved. They have to come from the list of approved trees that the city provides in the section that's addressed here. And we would ask the applicant to report to us for a period of 2 years that these trees maintain healthy and that they would need to be replaced. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, would the applicant like to address the podium, please? State your name and address.
Malam Soul, 4796 Ridgeview Road, Dunwoody. Thank you for considering this variance tonight. And I really want to thank the staff. They were very helpful. For somebody who's never been involved in variances, they made it seamless. As he stated, we were looking to put a pool. We moved into Georgia in 2014. We've been in Dunwoody from day one. We love our neighborhood. It's a very small, peaceful neighborhood. Drawback, there are no kids except our kids in the neighborhood. And we want them to have some memories in the house that we moved into. And part of it is trying to put a pool mostly for recreation and to create some family memories. As he mentioned, the lot, the way it's built, the house based on the lot was built in 2005 before we bought it, 10 years before we even bought it. A big percentage of the uses have been with the driveway. So if you look at the aerial photos, it's only the house and the driveway. That's what took 40%. There is no any additional constructions on it. We're asking for a variance to increase the usage by 6.2% so we can put the pool. We wanted to put a fire pit. We don't feel strongly about it if the board denies the fire pit. As far as the tree, because we have to push the retaining wall back to put the pool, there is a major concern that the tree will become unstable and any major storm that might knock it over the house. We've had several contractors come. The other problem has been the easement passing through halfway through the backyard. So we're staying 20 feet away from that. So that was the only location where you can put a pool. We are more than happy to put as many trees as it takes to replace the magnolia. If it ends up, we have to remove it. Most likely it will have to be removed, although we love that tree. It gives us plenty of shade. It's a great tree, but having lost a house in Florida from a tree falling on it, it's going to be very difficult to live with an unstable tree next to the house. If the contractor says it's digging too close to the roots and has to be removed, I'm afraid we'd have to replace it with other trees on the other side of the lot.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else speaking in favor of this application? Anyone in opposition that'd like to speak? Okay, we'll close public comment and open up to the board.
So I have a question for the city. So I'm assuming this is the same, it's the same section, 58. So it's from 35% to 46.2, right? We're talking about the 11% more?
Yeah, you're correct. That's the lot coverage percentage. Like the allowed lot coverage on this lot would be 40%.
Okay. And on this one, another question. Yeah, so tell me why is the city, I mean, I read it, it's fine. Why is the city so much against the fire pit?
Against, let's say that again.
The fire pit?
Fire pit. So we feel, it's a large house on this property. We feel it's a large driveway, and the variance conditions ask us to look for the minimum relief necessary to make use of the property. The applicant submitted the variance to build a pool and a pool deck, and we felt kind of with the additional amenities that the ask was slightly sort of too much to be sort of consistent with the minimum relief necessary. So we had asked the applicant if they would be willing to reduce their ask kind of for this variance to sort of reduce the maximum lot coverage a little bit.
How much more of coverage is the fire pit gonna put?
So they're currently, the initial proposal was for an additional 6.5 percentage points. So it would have been from 39.7 to 46.2. This probably reduces it by a percentage point.
One?
By a percentage point.
Right. Okay.
I have a question, and it's a clarification on these percentages. So I'm looking at the first case that had a maximum lot coverage of 35%, and then I'm looking at this one I think you said the maximum was 40%. Are they zoned different lot? Is it different zoning?
Yep, so we have different zoning districts have slightly
Okay.
different standards, but
Okay.
this is due to the different lot size
I
of the
understood.
two lots.
Okay.
Yep.
And so this lot, for this lot size, the maximum coverage is 40%. So we're, and so then the 46.2, is that with the fire pit in
That-
their plans?
That's correct.
Okay,
That
so
was-
so by you advising against the fire pit, then that reduces the coverage percentage of this variance request to, you said about 45%.
then that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. It's only 1%.
I have a question, Joe.
Claire, go ahead.
For the staff. When I read the packet, it seemed that the fire pit, and I know Richard's not here, that's why I wanted to bring it up. It seemed that the fire pit was supposed to be by where the Magnolia is. And so that one, from my understanding, is the reason we wanted, the fire pit was sort of in question is because if you put a fire pit there, the tree definitely is going. And so my concern, I don't know that I want to handcuff these neighbors by, if they want a permanent fire pit. If the tree's coming down anyway, it seemed to be to me, that's what the packet seemed to indicate. The reason the fire pit really in the city's recommendation was to take it out. Would you agree with that? Or maybe Richard, since he's not here, he can't speak to it.
No, Claire, I think you're exactly spot on. That was our initial thought. Let's try to preserve the magnolia tree. And it had the nice benefit of sort of reducing the increased lot coverage by this small amount as well. But that's where it initially came up, and it turns out that the tree may not be able to be saved,
Right.
even with the fire pit taken out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Claire. And the reason I kept asking the question is, I mean, you try to stay by the code, but you have to try to be practical also on these things. I mean, if I'm going to grant a variance and the person wants a little fire pit and they're doing something, and it's not gonna take that much more, hey, you know what? I don't know if I want to be the czar and go, no fire pit. But,
Well, and it's impervious, right? So if we can find a fire pit that's not 1% impervious. So.
Yeah. I think
thanks
you
for
all,
that.
I read it the same way, right? It was because of the preserve the magnolia tree initially, I
Right.
think. Just do the initial
Right.
site plan, yeah.
Right.
And the applicant suggesting that various contractors are saying due to the proximity of the pool, that obviously the root system could be damaged on that specimen magnolia. And just to be clear, staff has been pretty apparent on the replacements and pretty significant trees to replace that. And be required 2 to that 1 tree, correct? And be a canopy sized trees. So they wouldn't be seedlings, they'd be significant in size to have to replace that. So extra motivation for the homeowner to retain the tree to some degree, and if not, replace it with likeness. So any other questions, thoughts?
Well,
And by the way,
I guess,
I appreciate the city trying to get as much as possible close. I should say that.
that's true. Because I was trying to think back to the drawing and because you couldn't put the fire pit on the other side, because if not, the city would have recommended, because they're squeezed because of the shape of the lot and the driveway, right? Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Due to the sewer easement,
Right.
this is sort of the only practical location.
Yes, right. Okay. All right. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay. Anyone else?
I make a motion to approve with the fire pit.
I second.
And point of clarification, is this with the remaining staff conditions also?
Yes, and remaining staff conditions.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Any opposed? No, passes unanimously. ZBA 21-08 is approved.
With the fire pit. No. I know it's true.
Final case of the evening, ZBA 21-09. Nick Rollator, agent for the Branches Club, Inc., request a variance from previously approved DeKalb County variance to permit the installation of lights on the 4th tennis court in the Branches Club. Tax parcel number is 18-365-03031. Staff, this is a little interesting, so walk us through the history here a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Interesting case again. This goes back to the 1970s and to the initial construction of the tennis court, which was subject to a development agreement. So there was some opposition to the initial construction of the tennis courts. There was a development agreement that limited it to certain standards. Unfortunately, these records are unavailable. This surfaced again in 2006 when the club initially tried to light the tennis courses. There was a court decision that staff could not administratively approve the lighting, but instead it had to be submitted to the CBA at the time, the DeKalb County CBA. That process actually moved forward in 2009 to what's now the Dunwoody CBA, where the club came before the board and requested lighting for the first 3 of the tennis courts, but not the 4th at the time. This is what they're trying to do now. So 3 tennis courts are lit at the moment. The 4th one is currently unlit. They're asking to light the 4th tennis court as well. And there's the interesting tidbit that under the current city regulations, if this case wasn't going to the Board of Appeals previously, and there were variance conditions associated with that, and it was decided by the board, they could do it by right. So they could simply submit for their permits. We would approve it, but because of the history, it has to go back to you all. Again, this is like the club in the middle of the branches here. It has 4 tennis courts. The easternmost one, so the one to the right of your screen, is the one under discussion today that they're asking for a lighting. And yeah, we're recommending approval of the case, partially because we don't have anything in the code that truly would limit this at the moment. We've added a few conditions due to sort of the increased, I think, understanding of lighting impacts on neighbors and lighting impacts on the community. So we're asking that they're automatically cut off at 10 p.m. to reduce the impact. We're providing a maximum height here. We would propose the lighting fixtures to be full cutoff so that they emit no light above the horizontal. Again, it has to be shielded to minimize glare and light trespassing across the lot lines. And then condition number 5 is a bit unusual. That is to the lighting standards in the zoning ordinance. Those are in regulations B and in specific uses C, but eligibility is an A, and we would ask you to, with this condition, to simply apply those lighting standards to the court, even if they wouldn't meet it generally, if they wouldn't need it under eligibility A. And yeah, so we would recommend approval subject to these conditions to limit the impact on the surrounding area.
Thank you. Is the applicant here this evening or representative?
Good evening. My name is Nick Rollator. I'm a member of the Branches Club and an attorney representing them on their behalf for this petition. The Branches Club president, Jeff Rodenbaugh, is also here in case any questions should arrive that are more specific to board composition or anything like that. So yeah, as the city staff mentioned, this is an unusual case. I'm sure you're wondering why we're asking if we can put up lights on a tennis court when it's not prohibited. So to keep the backstory just very brief, originally there were 3 tennis courts built in the club sometime back in the 1970s. A 4th court was later desired. So to be added, there was a condition attached to it that, according to our history, just said no lights, literally nothing more than those 2 words. So this dispute that erupted in the 2000s when the club wanted to light the tennis courts was whether or not that meant no lights, period, on any of the courts, or no lights on the 4th court only. And so it got pretty contentious over time, particularly before the city was incorporated. This was all going back to DeKalb County jurisdiction only. And then in 2009, the board decided that any conditions that did exist could be lifted for lighting. And notably, there was nothing in that decision that specified the number of courts, but the club at the time felt, because of this history where we originally had the 3 courts and later added the 4th, that we would just light the 3 at the time. And particularly wanted to work with the neighbors that would be most impacted. And so this was seen as a sign of good faith to work with them and make sure that we could set a better path going forward. So that brings us to the present, where it's become somewhat impractical, especially as interest in playing tennis in our neighborhood has grown significantly. And we felt that, just kind of looking at all the various factors, now that the lights are there, the lights are there. Whether one more court is lit, it doesn't make a significant impact. This court is not detached from the others. It is immediately adjacent to those 3. So we're not really talking any new impact. In fact, we've spoken to the nearest neighbors that would be impacted. And we think that, especially with improvements in technology, we'd want to light not only this court with LEDs, but go back and take down the older lights on the other courts and switch those to LEDs when we do this. But we think we could actually mitigate the impact more so than it already currently exists. So that's just a little bit about the history of why in the world are we even here asking if we can light a tennis court. And I think I'll leave it at that unless there are any specific questions that pertain to the club or its members.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak in favor? Anybody opposed to this variance and wants to speak up?
I show a hand raised in Zoom.
Okay, great.
John, when you should be able to unmute and speak at this time.
You betcha. Thank you. I'm a Dunwoody homeowner here. Been here 19 years. I'm 4 houses up from the club. I really appreciate them not reaching out to me, even though they claim that they've spoken to the housing owners close by. Now, staff is correct that originally the club wasn't going to have lights. They spent years litigating trying to get lights. My question is, what percentage of daylight hours is the club not being used for tennis? What percentage of the parking space is not being used? The biggest problem we have is they clog the streets with illegal parking every time they have the club with activities down there. They've promised to take care of it. They haven't. So I propose, rather than spending money on these lights, they build themselves a parking deck. So we no longer have the problems with parking. And then we'll consider adding more lights, adding more noise, adding more traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. It's beyond the purview of this board, but points well taken. Anyone else?
There are no more hands raised in Zoom.
Okay, great. Board, any questions, thoughts?
Sure, you close the public question?
I do close the open portion.
Okay, so, I mean, I think I'm old enough in this board to remember that this came before us before. I think I remember the three tennis courts. It's got to be the same one. It's just branches and this. And back then, I mean, this room was full of people, and a lot of contentions back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And at the end of the day, they decided to have the lights. I do sympathize with the caller that wants to be against it, but hey, that's my neighborhood too. We're tennis and swim place, and every time the meet comes, you get traffic out of it. It's just that's just part of living in those communities, and I don't think we could decide on that anyway.
Yeah, it just has nothing to do with lighting.
Yeah, but practically, I'm just thinking, as much as if they have 3 already that are lit, and there's one right next to it, and there's possibly gonna be better lighting, I don't know whether not granting it to them is going to help anything else. I mean, that's my articulation. I want to hear from you guys.
Yeah, I kind of concur, right? And the fact that if there wasn't all this baggage or of legacy, right? And a lot of it was well fought and at the time was adjudicated correctly, we wouldn't be here, right? If they came today and the courts were not lit and they went to the city, we wouldn't have this meeting. So it's totally permitted within the current ordinances. I do have a lot of confidence in the city. They would painstakingly mitigate light pollution, if you will, and signage and backlighting. And I mean, a lot went into that in the creation of the city. So I can only trust the ordinance that the city has in place for that they'll have to ascribe to when they put this other lighting in for this other court. And I agree with you. It seems like it'd be marginally impactful since there's already 3 of them lit. So I kind of share the same thinking.
Actually, as I think about it, my memory doesn't go that far. I can't remember what I ate 2 days ago, but the conditions, the 6 conditions here, do these 6 conditions apply to the other 3 courts? I'm not looking to put them on, that's just a question.
These conditions would only apply to the 4th court. So only the 4th court. So only the court before you right now at the moment with this specific case.
No, I understand that. I'm asking, do you know if those conditions, and I think you answered my questions, apply to the others?
Or if they meet these standards at the moment? I'm not sure.
Okay, no, because I was thinking that maybe you took these conditions from what was there before and you applied them to it, but you know.
The 2009 case just had a generic condition that was, it should be, impact on the neighbors should be minimized, and we don't have a record how that was implemented at the time.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, you could have all these things, but they're all adjacent to each other. So I don't know what difference it's gonna make, but hey, I like it.
It did look like the site plan they turned it, that they, it's in the packet, was for, they're doing some changing to how the lights are all tied together. Did I misunderstand that? Because they're putting courts too, and they're putting them on different timers. I play a lot of tennis. I know how this works. Is that correct? Is the site plan you have in the packet? Can you go back to it, please?
Yes. So board member, the site plan is actually, they did not submit a new site plan.
Oh, this is
This one
existing.
actually doesn't show any lighting on that 4th court. That is used for illustrative purposes. That's the lighting on the existing 3 courts, and the 4th one.
Thank you. That confused me a lot. I'm like, why did they put a pole over there? Now it makes sense. Okay.
I have a question for the club representatives. How many additional light structures will be required to light the 4th court? So how many are there now? And how many are there, like 2 lights per court, or what's the?
So we'll go in the current 3 courts. Well, if I go to court 3, which is directly next to court 4, they're currently approximately 4 to 6 lights, I would say, and we'll be adding about 5. You'll have 3 right along the street, and then 2 kind of in the center on either side is the approximate plan right now. So in total, it'll be 9 poles and 12 lights on the 2 courts that are there, on court 3 and court 4.
So I'm confused. You have between 4 to 6 lights now, and you're going to add 5 more for this one court.
So because only court 3 is lit, in the center on either side, it's only 1 pointing towards court 3. You need to add 1 in the center to point towards court 4, 3 along the road, and then the same on the other side.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, but you said only court 3 is lit, but courts 1 and 2 are lit.
It is, yes.
Okay,
yes.
but because 3 and 4 are adjoining.
They're all next to each other, but those are directly, that's why I was referencing.
And so how many lights are serving courts 1 and 2? How many poles or lights?
Nine poles and 12 lights.
So it'll be identical.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, I do have another question. Is there, and the conditions are not in front of me because we have another screen, but is there time that the lights are turned off? Is that part of the conditions?
It's part of the condition
10 p.m.,
in the 10 p.m. That's our current operation as well. So all the lights are automatically turned off at 10 p.m.
Okay. And if it's my neighborhood, I guess these tennis courts, do they back up to some houses? Okay. And those neighbors, I don't see them here, so I don't.
So
That was the one?
so
Okay.
so there were and I don't want to pretend to know all the history back in 2009 and before, but there were 3 neighbors that had originally signed an agreement with the court in 2000 or with the club in 2009 when we kind of decided to move forward. Those are the 3 neighbors that I've had communication with. 2 of them have expressed they're okay with the addition of the lights. The 3rd neighbor said that they did not want the lights, but that they would not oppose it. So we've had those proactive discussions with those 3 neighbors that were signed on that agreement back in 2009. And I would say additionally, in addition to the conditions on here, we're also going to be installing rear visors on all of the lights. Just another mechanism to protect any potential light spillage. As Nick said, the LED will also help to reduce light spillage by better directing on the court. We're also going to be increasing landscaping between court 4 and the road there, just again, as another matter to kind of protect it. So we've tried to do our best to be proactive in as many mechanisms as possible to prevent any extra light spillage on all of the courts, not just the court 4.
In terms of I had a question, in terms of like the timing of the lights going off at 10, is that just set on a timer itself? Does it take into account daylight savings? You know, has there been a history of, neighbor complaints with respect to those lights not operating as intended, out of respect for nearby homeowners?
So they are automatic year round. On Sundays, they turn off at 9 o'clock. Every other day, it's 10 p.m. During daylight savings time, sometimes we forget. I think we have to make a switch. So there could be a couple of days where it goes an extra or turns off early. But yeah, in general, they're always turning off at 10 o'clock or 9 p.m. automatically.
Thank you. Board, any other questions? Do I have a motion?
I move to approve with the stipulations by the city.
I second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Got your lights. CBA 21-09 is approved. Thank you. Yeah. His issue is parking, I think. Now we open up for just general public comment for anything that anybody wants to open. There's no public comment online or in the on premises. I don't think so.
I see no hands raised at this time.
Thank you. Board, any comment? Anything to add? All right, excellent. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Good meeting.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.